Quordle is a multi-wordle game in which the challenge is to solve 4 simultaneous wordles. Quordle does a lot to distinguish itself from the other multi-wordle variants. For one, its visual design is entirely unique, opting for brighter colors instead of the typical darker style. But the most interesting thing about Quordle to me is its achievement system. There's a whole bunch of these achievements, with a wide variety of difficulty. Many of them are easy, such as completing a daily or losing a game. However, some of these achievements are truly quite difficult to achieve. Among these, one of them stands out: God Mode. Complete a Quordle in just 4 guesses. The perfect Quordle. Now, perfect multi-wordles are nothing new. People have been doing perfect duo-trigordles for months now. But Quordle is different. Not only do you have much lower odds of getting your first guess correct, but you also have significantly less boards available to guess at each stage. Sure, the actual number of words you need to get correct is only 4, so in that sense it's easier. But only having 4 boards to guess from makes it much harder to actually get those early guesses correct. Suffice to say, earning this achievement is quite difficult. But how difficult is it? That's what I'm here to find out. Now, there's 2 ways I can approach answering this question. The first is statistical calculation. In essence, I can write a program that will do a series of calculations that will eventually spit out the odds of getting a perfect Quordle. This is actually where I started. First, I defined a basic human replicable strategy for getting a perfect Quordle. It's quite simple. After getting the first guess correct, the player will then see which of the remaining boards has the least possible answers, and then randomly guess one of those answers. We're going to assume full knowledge of the answer list here. Any human who's willing to attempt this challenge is going to be giving himself as much of an advantage as possible. The main advantage to this method is that it will produce an exact probability, giving us the precise odds of getting this achievement on a given attempt. But there were some downsides. For one, the code took a really long time to run. Getting the probability for just one starting word took almost 13 hours. 2, there is a lot of room for error on my part. One small bug or mistaken methodology will give me incorrect results, and bug fixing proved to be quite difficult when one run is taking 13 hours. In the end, while I did get this code to produce a number, it's not a number I'm confident enough in to use in this video as the final result. However, I did learn one very important thing throughout this process: the best word to start with. While the full code took 13 hours for one word, running the code just 2 guesses deep was much quicker. Thus, it was possible to get probabilities of getting the first 2 guesses correct for every possible answer. Using this, I generated a top 10 list of the best starting words 2 guesses deep. Then, for each of these 10 guesses, I calculated the odds of success 3 guesses deep. Running the code 3 guesses deep took a couple minutes per word, so while it's not feasible for me to search every word like this, I was easily able to compare these 10 candidates. For the 2 guess deep search, trace appeared as the top word. After the 3 guess deep search, the order of the top 10 changed a bit, but trace was still on top. In fact, it was on top by an even larger margin than before. At this point, I was convinced that trace was the best starting word. Remember that in these perfect challenges, the first couple guesses are by far the most important to get right. After that, you should have a good amount of information and be able to make more accurate guesses. Thus, the word that gets these couple guesses right the most is very likely to be the best word overall. So not only would trying to compare all these words 4 guesses deep take days, but it would almost certainly change nothing. Before I wrap up this segment, I would be remiss if I did not mention that little GWS actually did all this research before I did. I did still write the code and collect all these results myself to verify, but he is the one who discovered trace was the best word first and should be credited as such. Alright, let's move on to the approach that we're actually going to use to answer this question: simulation. When a human attempts a perfect Quordle, they need to spend time starting a new game, typing their starting word, checking if it's correct, and resetting the board if it isn't. A computer can do this same process thousands of times in the same time period it takes a human to do it just once. Thus, we can write code that generates Quordle boards and have the program try to solve them perfectly using our aforementioned strategy. Then, after doing this millions of times, we can count up how many times it succeeded, divide that by how many attempts it made, and use that as our probability. There's two big advantages to this approach. The first is that coding this kind of simulation is much easier than coding long, complex probability calculations. It's also much easier to bug test since I can just run it over a small number of simulations and get a result. The other advantage is speed. I can run over 1 million attempts in less than 30 minutes and get a probability that will be very close to the true probability. In the 13 hours it took the previous code to complete, I could run over 26 million attempts and get an extremely accurate probability. The number of attempts I settled on is 10 million, which I believe to be a good balance of accuracy and time consumption. I'll go into more detail about how we quantify accuracy for these kind of things later. One more thing. When I code these simulations, I run every attempt with the assumption that the first word is always correct. Why do I do this? It's because factoring in the odds of getting the first word correct is extremely easy. There are 2,306 words on Quordle's answer list, and you have 4 shots to get one right. You might be thinking this means we just multiply 4 over 2,306 by whatever number the simulations end up giving us. But that's not the full story. Quordle won't generate the same answer twice on the same board. Let's imagine Quordle revealed if an answer was right or wrong one at a time. The odds of you getting your first answer right are 1 in 2,306. Assuming you got it wrong, what are the odds of getting your second answer right? They're not still 1 in 2,306, because whatever answer was chosen for the first board won't be chosen again. Thus, the odds are actually 1 in 2,305. This pattern continues for boards 3 and 4, which are 1 in 2,304 and 1 in 2,303, respectively. We just need one of these to be correct, so we add up all of these probabilities to get the true odds of getting the first guess correct. After doing this, we end up with about a 0.1736% chance. Note that this number differs very slightly from 4 over 2,306. It's not much, but there's no reason to be inaccurate if we don't have to be. Alright, it's finally time to look at our simulation results. After 10 million simulations, our code got a perfect Quordle on 79,132 of them. That's a 0.79132% success rate. How confident can we be in this result? Well, that's actually something we can calculate. We use a formula called the exact confidence interval, which will give us an interval that the true probability is in at a given percent likelihood. Now, I'm gonna be real with you. I do not understand this formula. It's scary and intimidating and it has a lot of letters. But the good news is, I don't really have to. This nifty webpage here, created by John C. Pizzullo, makes applying this formula very simple. Just specify your number of attempts, number of successes, and what likelihood you want your interval to be over. I want to be confident in this result, so I'm going to put 99% for the likelihood. This means that there is a 99% chance that the true probability will fall within the range that this formula will output. Now we just click compute and there we go. Our range is 0.78 to 0.8%. Thus, we can be 99% confident that our true probability is somewhere between those two percentages. A 99% probability of falling within a 0.02% range means that 10 million simulations is quite accurate. So that's it, right? We have our probability, let's just multiply it by the odds of getting the first guess right and be done with it. Well, I think we can do better. Remember our strategy from earlier? It's pretty simple. In fact, it's a bit too simple. We're just randomly guessing an answer, but some answers are clearly better than others. If we make smarter guesses that give us more information, we can increase our odds of success. In theory, we could produce a complete chart of the best possible guess for every possible board at every stage. However, trying to run that code would probably take me months. Instead, we're going to guide our guesses using a heuristic. If you've never heard the word heuristic before, it just refers to a simple strategy used to estimate the solution to complex problems. In this case, our complex problem will be which guess we make across all possible boards. So what's our simple strategy? Well, we want to get as much information as possible, so let's try to guess letters that will give us more yellows and greens. Here's the plan. At each guess, after picking the board with the least amount of possible answers, we're going to score all of those answers. We'll be looking at the letters in each of these words, as well as all of the answers on Quordle's answer list. For each letter in a possible answer, we'll add 1 point for each word on the answer list that causes that letter to be yellow or green. We'll also add an additional point if that word causes the letter to be green. However, we need to be careful. If we already have a green letter in a given position, then an additional guess that also has that same letter in the same position gives us no new information. We want to make sure we're not adding to our score when the information a guess gives us is redundant. Thus, we only add the yellow and the green points if we don't already have a yellow or green of that letter in our previous guesses. Likewise, we only add the additional green points if we don't already have a green of that letter in that position. Here's an example to show how this works. Let's say we've already guessed trace, and we're scoring the potential next guess, taper. We go through the letters of taper one by one and score them. We already have a T in the first slot, so the T in taper scores 0. We also already have an A, but this A is in a different slot. Thus, we won't be giving this A any points for answers which turn it yellow, but it will get 1 point for each answer that turns it green. The P is a new letter, so it gets 1 point for every answer that turns it yellow or green, and an additional point for every answer that turns it green. The E and the R are in the same boat as the A, and will only receive a point for every answer that turns them green. Once we've done all this, we add up the letter scores to get a total score for the word taper for this specific guess. We'd repeat this process for all possible guesses for the chosen board, and then guess the one of the highest score. So, how much does this heuristic improve our odds of success? To find out, I ran another 10 million simulations in which the program makes every guess using this process. The results? 96,120 of those 10 million games were successful perfect Quordles. That's a success rate of 0.9612%. This may not seem like a huge improvement at first, but when dealing with percent chances of success this small, it's actually quite significant. Using the same process as before, we can calculate an exact confidence interval of 0.95 to 0.97%. Again, we have a range of 0.02%, indicating this result is quite accurate. Let's translate these percentages into hours. First, we can multiply the success rate by the odds of getting the first guess correct, which we derived earlier. Doing this gives us about a 0.00167% chance of success for every individual attempt. In other words, you would be expected to try 59,939 boards before you'd get just one perfect Quordle. So how long does a single attempt take? If my mouse movements are on point, it takes me about 4.5 seconds to type trace, realize it's wrong, open the settings, click the reset button, and close the settings. Let's round this up to 5 seconds per attempt to account for errors as well as partially successful attempts which take up more time. At 5 seconds, 59,939 boards would take 299,695,000 seconds, or about 83 hours and 15 minutes. In conclusion, if you want to get every Quordle achievement, be prepared to endure about 83 hours of grinding for the perfect Quordle. Or, you could start a new game, go to settings, scroll down to the seed, copy the seed, solve the game, remember the answers, start a new game, paste the seed here, and type in those 4 answers that you remembered. Your choice. Hey! I want to give a special thanks to both Little GWS and What's His Bucket. Both of them contributed heavily to the making of this video, whether it was helping me produce my results or checking my results with their own code. If you like this video and want to see more videos like it, make sure you leave a like as well as subscribe to the channel. Your support is a great way to let me know if you want me to make more of these kinds of videos. Anyways, that's all from me. See ya!